Okay, let's do a little reaction video here. I haven't heard all of this video. I heard a few minutes of it, and I thought I would do it. This is Sully, Kitchen Table Research, or Marcus the Money on TikTok. She thinks she knows about the Darlie Routier case. She is an expert who's sitting on a criminal case, with a gunshot wound. So she says. I think she's just an idiot, if you ask me. She's never served on any case as an expert anywhere, and if you question her on that, she will dodge it. She says she doesn't want to be doxxed, but everybody knows she's Anna Sullivan. Everybody knows where she lives. Doesn't want to be doxxed. That's why she doesn't mention that case. At first, she said there was a gag order on it. I said, well, if there's a gag order on it, then you shouldn't be saying anything about it at all. That means gag. Hello, Darlie, Darren Routier. She's a liar. But let's see what she's got to say.
Back into a case that we've talked about a lot before, but after really getting some feedback after all of our content hit YouTube.
After making a lot of 299s, and this is a person who wants to seek justice for Devin and Damon falsely, but she also wants to seek money for her pockets. We've for 299, she'll tell you all about Darlie for 299. We do this for free for Devin and Damon. So you just remember that right there.
This weekend, and people getting back into the Darlie case and asking me some questions. I wanted to kind of give you an overview of all of the things wrong with the Darlie Routier investigation. So let's get it.
She goes on to talk about Charles Lynch here in just a minute, and I'm gonna let her talk because I didn't hear all of it.
We're going to take this point by. So this is Charles Lynch, okay? And so he was.
Now, you also got to remember that Charles Lynch was honest when he was on the stand. He said that he felt like the fibers needed to be tested more before he can make a determination on it. He said he feels like they're consistent. The screen fiber was consistent, but he felt like it needed to be tested more. So he was honest. All right, that would favor Darlie, that he was honest.
The trace evidence expert that worked the Darlie Routier case for the state. So let's talk about Mr. Lynch here for a little bit. First of all, Charles Lynch, between 1994 and 1995, had several psychiatric visits where he was being.
Let's talk about the several psychiatric visits that Darlie Key had before the crime. If you want to talk about people having problems and getting them straightened up, let's talk about Darlie Key, because she's been in therapy ever since before this crime. Psychiatric treatments, problems with pills, problems with drugs. So Darlie Key's been the same thing. So now we're 2 for 2, right?
Treated for substance use disorders, in particular alcoholism.
Yeah, he drank a lot. He was involved in an airline crash. He wasn't involved in it. He went to study the bodies, and there were more than 100 bodies. So for a while, it took a toll on him. He knew that he needed to get some help. He stated that he didn't want to do any cases or anything until he got himself straight.
He even stated himself that he was not equipped to take the stand or to testify
at the time
in any cases during this time. And the reason for this is because Charles worked on a aviation crash that happened in Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW Airport, I believe in 1990.
So just quickly, let's take a look at Delta Flight 191. This is the one that Charles Lynch was investigating. And I just want to make sure that we understand one thing here. August 2, 1985. Not 1944. Not 1954. Not 1994. But 10 years before. This is the case. This is the plane crash that she's talking about right here. There's a list of all of them, so you can look. The list of all plane crashes in that area in that year and the time. But that's August 2, 1985. That's not 1994, 1995. Wrong ink.
before, and that case had a toll on his mental health, and he just didn't feel like he was ready to come back.
So he had the wherewithal to know that he's having a mental health issue right now, and he needed to get out and get that taken care of. Which is what Darlie should have done. She should have got her mental health taken care of before she killed her kids. This man was smart enough to know that he was having problems and that he needed to get them dealt with. And he did get them. But let's take a look. And I am competent to make this affidavit. He never said he was not competent to stand trial for Darlie. He never said he wasn't prepared to testify for the state because it was 1996, not 1985, when he suffered those plane crash victims. Now, if you move down here, you can see I see a couple things in here that are concerning to me. I am currently employed with the Virginia Division of Forensic Science, Trace Evidence Laboratory, 700 North 5th Street, Richmond, Virginia, 23218, as a forensic scientist senior, FS 123, and have been so employed since September 1999. So he went on to better things. He went on to be a supervisor. He teaches. He's an instructor now. The Division of Forensic Science is a nationally accredited forensic laboratory, and as such, I was required to pass hair, fiber identification, comparison tests, pass a mock trial prior to being allowed to do casework. So he was trained. This is where they say that there was a mock trial done in the Darlie case. But no. See? They get things wrong. I've also worked as part-time as an adjunct instructor at the Virginia Commonwealth University in the Master's Program of Forensic Science. Who wants to listen to what the fuck you got to say, Sully? He was doing this shit while you were just a stain in your daddy's pants. Now, this tells a little bit about him. About where he met with Parks and Jenkins, and that's what he looked at. And this is his recommendation. This is a truly honest recommendation. As a trace evidence analyst, it is my professional opinion that further forensic testing on this evidence would have been appropriate in order to adequately investigate the factual basis of the prosecution's theory. So you should have added that into your little thing about Charles Lynch, but you don't dig deep. You want people to dig deep into their pockets, but you should have put that right there. As a trace evidence analyst, it is my professional opinion that further forensic testing on this evidence would have been appropriate in order to adequately investigate the factual issues basis of the prosecution's theory. Specifically, it is my professional opinion that if Bart Epstein and Terry Labor were released from their retention as experts for Darlie's defense, such release constituted a grave error on the part of Darlie's defense counsel. Instead, you come up with the wrong dates on a plane crash. If I was sitting on your side, this is what I would have brought up about Lynch. But instead, you're getting dates wrong and shit like that. All these affidavits came out around, you notice, Sanford's came out 2002. Darren's came out 2002, around in July. All these affidavits came out around the same time. But anyways, there's that. If you're going to talk about somebody, you have to be a little bit more in depth, and you have to get the dates right. Them dealt with. Darlie dealt with her problems in a different way.
And provide key witness testimony on cases like this. So
what's with the finger? Are you like totally single white female here? Because that's exactly what Danelle did with the finger. We can see Charles Lynch. We don't need you to point at him.
So Charles Lynch, within the year of Darlie going to trial, had been in and out of the psychiatric unit.
So, and no, he wasn't in a psychiatric unit. See, this is where she lies. He was not an inpatient. He was never an inpatient. He was getting counseling because he went through something traumatic. It's called PTSD, which is a lot of people feel like Darlie had, and she didn't get it dealt with. She didn't get that stress disorder taken care of. Charles Lynch did.
Okay, so then let me introduce you.
Oh, God, this woman with Tom Bevel. Tom Bevel is the leading expert on blood spatter. They write books. They write a series of books. They've been doing it for years. He is the leading expert.
To Tom Bevel. So he was, for the state of Texas, he was the blood pattern analysis expert. And he testified on the state's behalf against Darlie Routier in the original trial back in 1997. Okay, now let's talk about Tom Bevel. He's had at least 3 overturned wrongful convictions.
One of those cases that she's talking about is the wrongful conviction of Jason Payne, which is due mostly to prosecutorial misconduct. You can look it up. I'm not going to go through all this. The wrongful conviction of Jason Payne, that's you type that in and it'll come up. And but you go on down here and we talk about, it shows Bevel's interaction. That case also came with 2 counts of prosecutorial misconduct by District Attorney James Wheeler, lead investigator, to present false testimony. There was false testimony in that case. So it wasn't just Tom Bevel. There's a plethora of things that got the one case. So here we go to investigating innocence, which was done by Bill Clutter. He was a failed Senate campaigner. They came out really strong for Darlie Routier years ago, and they backed away from it. They just backed away from it. Bill Clutter, look him up. Now, Cam did make this that is written on investigating innocence is correct. He made mistakes on that, on the David Cam case, right? Regarding the blood splatter that was on the t-shirt, on the sweatshirt. But the thing of it is Cam was able, even though there was that mistake, Cam was still able to prove himself innocent due to other stuff. How come Darlie can't prove herself innocent?
Okay.
He has had some overturned wrongful convictions, but he's also had convictions that have been overturned because he found them. We know that forensics is not a perfect science. Sully should know this. She claims to work in it. It's not a perfect science.
Okay, so out of how many cases that he's tried, even getting, if you think, okay, yeah, people occasionally get
Well, how many cases has he tried? Tell us, Sully.
it wrong. Well, he's gotten 3 wrong and has sent people to unalived row and affected.
No, that'd be death row, and it's not unalived row. We're not. It's death row. It's a death row. It's a penitentiary, and that's where that if you commit a crime, they will kill you. That's death. That's not unalive.
Tons of lives. And the people that he wrongfully convicted then became victims of this man's expert opinion.
Well, no, he's not. They're not victims of his expert opinion. They're victims of, I don't believe that Tom Bevel's opinion alone ever got somebody convicted. There's other evidence along with it that got them convicted.
So we have Tom Bevel as a witness in the case.
Okay. And how long did it take those people, once they were wrongly convicted, how long did it take those people to get out of prison? And why is it taking Darlie so long? How did they get out? Those wrongfully convicted people. Did they show the evidence where he was wrong? Is that what they did? How come Darlie can't do that? How come Darlie's had more testing done than any other death row inmate in Texas history? In Texas history. Those other 3 people that were wrongfully convicted, they were able to get their shit together and get out. How come Darlie can't?
I want to state that the state of Texas actually went to Oklahoma to get this expert.
Yeah, that's because they weren't looking anywhere, right? See, you went from they weren't looking anywhere, they weren't getting the right help, they weren't doing this, they were overwhelmed, but they were smart enough to go after the best blood spatters analysis.
Which I don't understand why they couldn't have gotten an expert out of Texas.
Because they wanted the best expert. Duh. What difference does it make?
Well, we've talked about this before. The state can go find an expert that's willing to state really whatever they want. And we've already gone through Tom Bevel and how he did the.
So now we're going to say, she's going to say that, how do they know what he's going to say before they hired him? Let's get Bevel. He'll say whatever we want without even giving him any evidence or anything like that. He's not saying what they want. He's saying things that are perfectly clear. And there's points in this that I don't agree with Tom Bevel. You know, I don't agree with how far back he put his hand, even though that blood spatter shouldn't be there. How far back he put his hand to show the drop of that knife when Labor Epstein did it differently. Your hand doesn't have to come back over your shoulder. It can, but it doesn't have to make that stab. But he put it way back. He was also the one that found that Darlie lied when she said she ran after the guy. They made her, they put red paint on Darlie's feet and made her walk a line of paper. And then they made her run a line of paper. And that's how they proved that she walked through that scene and she didn't run because of Tom Bevel.
Experiments in Darlie's case, and that he did not follow the Dalbert standard, and that his entire testimony should have been thrown out for not following scientific methods. And
he doesn't have to follow anything to come up with an opinion. You have an opinion. What are you following?
Research methods that have been put into our legal system for this very purpose. So then everybody in this case is always going to tell you, go read the testimony. Okay, to this day, the testimony has been corrected. So any of the testimony that you read had to be redone using the audio out of.
Yeah, so what's the problem? Using the audio. The courts ruled that testimony was fine.
The courtroom because the original court transcriber made over 30,000 mistakes.
She made 33,000 mistakes, which equals 3 mistakes per page. Know your shit.
Okay, those have been corrected to this day, but when the jury goes in for deliberation and asks to see some of the transcripts, they are using wrong information.
How are they using wrong information when you just sat here and said that they used the audio from exactly what was said in the courtroom and put that in those transcripts that those jurors are just now asking for? How can that be wrong?
That no one testified to, that the court transcriber did not get right. So even though we have it corrected today, the jury had incorrect statements.
The jury had no incorrect statements
made. So because the grand jury indicted Darlie, or they decided to place her arrest warrant for the blonde hair that was found in the screen, which later came back forensically to believe.
Yeah, the blonde hair, they really felt like that was Darlie's because it was dyed. And so they said, oh, we found it. They did. They put it out. They said, oh, we found this blonde hair before they tested it. And once they tested it, they found out that it belonged to a Rowlett Police Department female. that was near the screen.
To be another police officer, Sarah Jones' hair. Darlie is then denied bail or bond.
That wasn't the only reason that she was indicted. There was one of them, though. And they took it away, and you still had those other reasons. If they took it away and it wasn't hers, how come they didn't just unindict her, right?
So, because the forensic evidence has not come back and it had just been assumed that that hair was Darlie's. So, she's denied her basic rights for bail. She has not been
They did set a bail for her.
proven guilty. She is right now innocent before guilty. And so, before the testing come back, they've already revoked her bail. Not only that, but then the judge, Judge Toll, in one of the probably third or fourth witnesses that goes up to testify, the defense objects. And Toll, in front of the jury, says, take this objection up on her appeal. So the judge in front of the jury is stating that the judge believes that she's guilty and that they can take that up on appeal.
No, that doesn't mean the judge believes that she's guilty. That means that if she's found guilty and you have a problem, then you can take it up on appeal. It doesn't mean the judge thinks that she's guilty. Okay? The jurors are the ones who absolutely made that decision.
Even though Darlie has not been found guilty, and that is very biased for the jury to hear the judge state.
It's not very biased to take anything up on appeal. It's not biased for the judge to say, take that up on appeal. But let's look at what the judge did with Helena Kasabian. Let's look at what he did with her. He didn't feel like her testimony would match the crime scene, and he didn't allow the jury to hear her, a lot of it.
That should have been done in judges' chambers, or the jury should have been removed during this conversation. Then we have pictures from the crime scene that end up looking like this because they could not take forensic photography. And if you notice these little date imprints, that's because these photos were taken on disposable cameras, and the bags.
That's not the only pictures that were taken either. That's not a disposable camera. The pictures were taken by David Neighbors, who now has his own CSI. He was working with James Cron before Mr. Cron passed away. The photos and how they were taken really makes no difference because they show the pictures. They show what was in the house. I'm not going to fiddle around with, they use disposable cameras. So what? Disposable camera does the same thing that a Nikon can do.
That they brought with them to collect evidence out of this scene came from Albertsons. So they bought the cameras and the evidence bags. They just picked up brown bags from Albertsons.
What's wrong with that? Forensic says it has to be in a brown bag. Period.
Now, I'm not saying all brown bags, a brown bag is a brown bag. Could that have been used properly to store evidence? Possibly, but when the fact that they bought disposable cameras, so you guys went all the way to Oklahoma to go get your blood expert, yet you couldn't go down back to the police station to go get a camera?
They didn't have to go to Oklahoma to get Tom Bevel. They made a phone call. They didn't have to go there. They didn't go to show up at his office. They made a phone call. And Oklahoma's not that far away from Texas. You guys went all the way to New York with 2 detectives. Why couldn't you bail her out?
To take actual, real forensic photography. So, again, this plays a...
So are you saying that pig's blood isn't a real thing to use, when you're describing a bloody scene? Why can't you just get human blood? Why can't you just get human blood from somewhere?
Major problem is the way that the crime scene not only the contamination that occurred. And you have to remember that these police officers that are bagging this evidence don't have proper training, and they're putting.
How do you know they don't have proper training? They don't have proper training. That's a fucking lie right there.
Wet evidence on top of wet evidence on top of wet evidence. They're not letting anything.
It's not wet evidence on top of wet evidence on top of wet evidence. There was one instance where I believe it was the nightshirt was put in with something else, folded over.
Dry. They're not bagging separate things separately. They're just throwing everything into these Albertsons bags and then throwing them in the back of their car.
Well, where are they supposed to put it? In front of their car? Where's any evidence supposed to be placed at when they're taking it to what? You want them to hire a limo for it, or
Again, also, like, you guys went to Oklahoma to go get a blood pattern expert, but you couldn't go back to the.
who said they went to Oklahoma? And let's talk about this, all right? Because Dr. Phil offered the chance for them to be on the show with people that represented us. Dr. Phil's producers would not do the show unless somebody from the family showed up. And none of them would. You know why? Because Dr. Phil wouldn't buy that shit. And they know it.
Police station to go pick up a fucking camera. Another thing that you'll lack seeing in any of the crime scene photos are any of the yellow evidence markers. They didn't even use evidence markers to.
They don't have to. Be sure and put your big old forehead up in the camera when you do that. Can we talk about the videotape that they made?
To mark where they're taking pieces of evidence from. All right, then Rowlett Police comes in and says that they do luminol testing. It says right here where it's highlighted. The luminol, 1, green leather couch facing south, living room in the Roman room. On the west arm of the couch, a child's right handprint was developed with luminol. We were unable to photograph the print. First of all, luminol does not wash away a print. That's why luminol is used.
Luminol, if it's sprayed on an armrest that is facing downward, right? If they spray it, it's going to drop it. It's going to get you a stain. Even get a bloody stain. Put it on a wall. Hit it with something wet. And watch what happens.
So they didn't do the luminol right. They didn't do the photography right. They didn't collect evidence right. They had bad experts that came in and testified. They denied Darlie's bail and bond. Another thing the state fails to do in this case is ever point out a cohesive timeline or a motive. Now, I know legally in the United States, you don't need to prove motive.
That's because there is no timeline. And even Barb Davis, the one who said that Darlie was innocent after writing a very damaging book about her called Precious Angels, she came back and said there is no timeline. There really isn't a timeline if you think about it, because after Darren went to bed, that's where the timeline starts, in my opinion. If there's going to be a timeline, it all happened after Darren went to bed.
Motive to get a conviction for the unaliving of somebody. However, I think that it's impertinent to the civilians and the people that live in these communities to know what happened. It's the same thing in the Scott Peterson case. Scott Peterson, guilty, 99.9% yes. However, we still don't know what happened to Lacey. Therefore, there's always still going to be questions. We will never know what happened to that night of Darlie, but why do so many people attack Darlie's character and the fact that she can't remember through this traumatized event? However, the police can't remember either. The police don't remember anything when they...
Because they don't stand convicted. Darlie remembered the simplest things like popcorn, chicken soup, who fed the bottle to the baby, who put the food away. She remembered all those simple little details, but she couldn't remember anything else. I don't know.
they go back on the stand. So when you put all of these mistakes together, including some of our experts, the way that the crime was investigated and handled, you have to ask yourself, did Darlie Routier get a free
We don't have to ask ourselves anything. Yes, she got a fair trial. What you need to do is show us how she's innocent. You're not showing it. You're showing us that the police are guilty of this, the police are guilty of that, but you're not showing how she's innocent.
trial? Let me know about down in the comments, you guys. Let me know. Did you think Darlie Routier got a fair trial?
Absolutely 100% got a fair trial. And if you don't think she did, let's push for another one. Let's do another one. Come on. I'm not one of those that's against the second trial because I know the outcome is going to be the same and it's going to be sealed and it's going to be done. Give her another trial.
All right, you guys have an excellent day, and I'll be back with you soon. Bye.
Bye. Darlie's guilty and going to kill her. Your finger aren't going to stop a thing. You can't. You're in this for the money. We know that.